Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the conversation. I'm your host, James Humlin, and as always, I speak for myself. My words and thoughts are my own ideas, not anybody else's. You can't blame anyone else for them. If you want the full disclaimer, go back to our introduction of July 4th, 2018, and it's all in there. Before I get started on today's topic, I just want to respond to a comment that I had on the previous video. It was pointed out to me that if you actually measure the percentage of the population between -1 standard deviations and +1 standard deviations, where I repeatedly said last time it was 72% of the population, that is incorrect. It is in fact 68% of the population. And my explanation for that, I remembered it was 2 percentage points off of 70. I went the wrong way. I do apologize for that, and I do promise in the future, if I ever take the time to write this down and make pretty graphs and reports, and I will give you good citations, and I will check all the figures if I do a full written down version, and you guys can expect I can write a fine report, so you'll have that to look forward to. But for these videos, I'm looking more to be off the cuff. Yeah, I just want to have a nice conversation with you guys, and that being the case, I don't want to do this off a script. So the numbers might occasionally be incorrect. I may say things or misattribute things, and if I do, feel free to call me on that. Do check my facts, by all means do. But I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not intentionally trying to mislead or misdirect anybody here. I'm just trying to have an exchange of ideas and thoughts, and what I'm saying, coming as it is just off the top of my head, may not always be completely accurate, and I want you guys to understand that up front. But do thank you for pointing that out. And with that, let's get back to the conversation. For this week, we're going to be talking about the idea, the concept that's come up frequently. It's been satirized in cartoons and in the media. I don't vote for anybody. I always vote against. And I'm sure everybody who's watching has heard that phrase expressed before in some place. It's a very common concept here in America. And what I want to point out to you is that this kind of attitude is exactly what we would expect in a country where the political conversation is being driven by the extremes. What we're basically saying is that, again, for that majority, that's 68%, that's between 1 and -1 standard deviations from the norm, that the majority of people does not really feel like they're connected with the people who are speaking from either extreme. So if you're leaning a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and you look at your party's candidate, you're going to look at them and go, that guy is just out there. I don't really think what he's saying is right, but they will point out that the guy on the other side is even more out there. So you can't vote for that. You have to vote for this, even though it's a bit wacky, because it's a lot closer wacky to where you are than that wacky over there. And what they don't want you to notice is that you got a whole lot more in common with people who are just a little bit on the other side of the center line than you do with the people who are all the way out making the talking points for the party. Now, to try and illustrate this point a little bit more concretely, we're going to look at height. And again, I'm pulling these numbers out of thin air. I'm making this up. If you want to look at what the actual numbers are for average heights and what the actual standard deviation is, I don't know. I'm just trying to make an example that will help you guys understand what I'm trying to communicate here. So we're going to assume, for the sake of argument, that the standard height of a human being is 5 foot 6 inches tall, and that one standard deviation is 6 inches, to make the math nice and easy. So everybody at average height is 5 foot 6. One standard deviation below is 5 foot. 2 is 4 foot 6. 3 is 4 foot. 4 is 3 foot 6. So on down the line. There's really not anybody out past 4 standard deviations, but we'll go that. The other direction, 5 foot 6. 6 foot is 1 standard deviation. 6, 6, 7 foot. 7 foot 6 is 4 standard deviations. And again, the tail at that point gets so far out, you're going to have handfuls of people anywhere further than that. So we're just going to go with that. What we're trying to talk about here now is a conversation. The political conversation, the directions, the policies, the procedures, the proposals that are being made are effectively being made by people who are 3 foot 6 on one side and people who are 7 foot 6 on the other. And we can understand why they're not coming together, why they're not seeing eye to eye, why they just cannot get this together. But the people in the middle don't have that much different from each other. If you're 5 foot 4 and someone else is 5 foot 8, you guys are pretty much in the same place. Now that 5 foot 4 person hearing this 7 foot 6 person talking about how everything needs to be taller and how the ceilings aren't going to work and how the stair steps need to be wider, they don't see that life the same way. That 5 foot 8 person listening to the person who's 3 foot 6, same problem. But the conversation isn't or shouldn't be between people who are that far apart on the spectrum. that's the way it's dominated, though. What we need to do is realize that the candidates that we have are really the problem. It's not that society really has these extreme views and everybody is really in favor of these two things. It's that nobody who's more moderate, nobody who's more central, nobody who is more even keeled is brought forward to run as a candidate. We're looking for people who divide. The parties are looking for people who divide. They want to find people who have the charisma, who have the excitement, who have the anger, the passion, the voice to try and rabble rouse the people up towards one extreme or the other. And the more extreme it can be, the more passionate they can be, the more divisive it can be, the better it is. But that's not best for the country. What we need to do, that 68% of us in the middle, and that up to 80% of us who are even pretty close to the middle, not that far out, is say we need to get people who represent common sense. We need to get people who represent dignity. We need to get people who represent reason. We need to get people who know how to work with each other and not people who are working to divide each other. And the problem that you run into in partisan politics is this idea that compromise is failure. That if you are a Democrat and you vote for something that a Republican sponsored, you betrayed your party, and vice versa. If you're a Republican and you vote for a Democratic agenda, you have betrayed your party. It doesn't matter how reasonable, how rational, how mild, how moderate the proposal is. The expectation is that you are going to toe that party line and you are going to vote with that bloc, regardless of how crazy the people who are heading that bloc happen to be. And one of the interesting things that we've heard in the recent news, if you've been paying attention, we just lost yet another Supreme Court justice who was a very powerful swing vote because he was a conservative who would often vote liberal, and people did. Look at that. Why is it that the one person on the Supreme Court who was nominated by one party but would vote his conscience with either side, depending on what the issue was the most powerful voice? Voting in the bloc does not give you power. Voting in the bloc does not give you a position to reason from. Voting in the bloc does not give you the ability to exercise your free will, to exercise your intellect, to make decisions, to consider the issues, and to actually do what makes the most sense. Instead, you're locked in to whatever somebody else has decided is best, based completely on these extreme points of view. That's not a way to run the country. Now, we're going to talk more in the future about how it is that we can come together, how we can try and find these good candidates, how we can get them out there, how we can, as good or sort of good, leaning left, leaning right, quasi-Republican, quasi-Democratic people, all us good centrists out there who don't have a party of our own, how can you identify the best candidate of either side? There's so many Americans identify themselves as independent. Why? Because they don't want to be stuck with that paintbrush. I'm always going to vote this way. I'm always going to vote that way. Most of them too tend to vote one way or the other, whatever they call themselves, because we are people of habit and we do have our leanings and we tend to go with what is most comfortable and what is the attitude of our society, our friends, our family, our community that we live in, our workplace. We're influenced by people around us. Of course we are. But people who really stop and think, people who actually evaluate the issues, and I think a lot more of us do think about these things than actually talk about them, and a lot more of us talk about them than actually take any action to do anything about it. And that's what we need to change. We need to get out there. We need to be as loud or louder than the screaming trumpets on either side. We need to call for the people on both sides to recognize that we're not different from each other. Okay, we're a little different. Everybody's different from each other. Everybody's unique. But what this country doesn't need is two different diverse opinions of the future that can never be reconciled. What it needs is strong leadership from the center that is looking to take the collective body of the Americas, bring all the people together, try and find the ideas that are most critical, try to find the path that is least divisive, to try and find a way that most people can live with, as opposed to trying to find a way that promotes one or the other agenda that really reflects opinions of a very small minority of Americans. But we let those loud voices drown out the voices in the middle who don't really talk up that much in the first place because people in the middle don't tend to be that passionate. They are more reasonable. They are more they are very interested in keeping life going smoothly. And we just want to not rock the boat too much one way or the other. And we look at, okay, well, things are way over here. Maybe eventually they'll swing back this way. And for a good time, we'll be right here in the middle where it's comfortable. And the more we can do that, the better off we are, right? Well, no. No, because the more you're rocking from way over here to way over here to way over here, the sooner the whole boat's going to tip over. And then everybody's in the water and nobody's happy. What we need to do is argue to not swing that far in the first place. Let's get people in there who want to keep us down the middle, who don't look at the aisle as something that you trample on, but look as the aisle as where people come together, the aisle where people meet, where the conversation takes place, where you can really listen to the positions, where you can listen to the facts, where you can listen to the data, make a good decision, and act on it. Remember, we're arguing that everybody needs to stop, think, talk, and act. And if you follow that maxim, if we take that and live that in our lives, if that becomes the way that we do politics, if that becomes the way that we do government, if that becomes the way that we do marriage, that we do relationships, things are going to work out so much better for us. But it needs to start with us. We can't make anybody else do it. We can't demand that they do it. We need to be out there setting that example, showing people exactly what it is to be a reasonable, rational, a proud and patriotic American citizen, to be proud that we have people on both sides that agree with each other, that are not mortal enemies, that are not divided against each other, that are not set at odds, that are not tooth and nail fighting. And that's not who we are as a people. And I cannot express how much it frustrates me that that is the message that we constantly receive, that we are at each other's throats, and that brother should be turned against brother, and father against daughter, and mother against son, and everybody should buy their party lines and crash into each other in the name of democracy, in the name of the Republicans, in the name of the Democrats. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. The people you know, the people you love, the people you care about, the people you see every day, they are more important than any party ideal anyone tries to shove down your throat. And if you let those ideals divide you, if you let those ideals make you think like your family is less important than this extreme position that's nominated by some crazy person who's got some agenda that has nothing to do with what your mother, brother, sister, daughter, coworker has to do with you, then you're not living. You're letting someone else set your life for you, and you're letting them break down the society that you're a member of. You don't have to. This is our society. We need to claim it, we need to defend it, and we need to make it right. And if you're with me on that, and keep listening to this conversation, let's keep the talk going. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.